Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to show you how we can set up an association, a one-to-many association between two Mongoose models by embedding data. And we're going to be working with user and post. So this will be like a Facebook or a blog app where we have a user, and a user can have many posts, but a post belongs to one user. And we're not going to be creating an actual app here with routes and templates. We're just going to focus on the data and the data modeling. So I'm going to get started by making a new file inside of this associations directory that I made. You can do this wherever you want. It's going to be a single file, and I'll call it embed.js. And I'll open that up. And inside of here, I'll require Mongoose, which I haven't installed yet. So I'll do that next. npm install Mongoose. And that will take a moment. There we go. Let's make some space. And once we require it, the next thing we want to do is connect to a database. So mongoose.connect. And this is totally up to us again, the name of the database, but it has to be mongodb://localhost/ and we'll call this blog demo, just like that, and save. Okay, so now we need to define two models. We have user and we have a post. And a user will just have an email and a name, and a post is going to have a title and then a content, the actual post itself. So we'll start with the user. We need to define the schema. So var user schema equals new mongoose.schema. And then we're going to have email, which is a string, and name, which is a string, just like that. And then we'll create the model. So var user equals mongoose.model user, the singular version, and then user schema is what we're building it from. And we'll save that. Okay, now let's move on to the post. So we're going to create another schema, this time var post schema equals new mongoose.schema. And then each post has a title that's a string and content that will just make a string as well. And then we also need to turn that into a model. Var post model equals mongoose.model post, comma, post schema. All right, so we have two schemas set up, two models. Let's make a little bit of room here. So we have our posts and we have our users. And let's just try running this, make sure we don't have any syntax errors to start. Node embed.js looks good. Now let's go and create a single user just to make sure our model works. So at the very bottom down here, I'm going to make a new user. So we'll just call it var new user equals new user. And then we'll pass in email, and email will be charlie@brown.edu, and name will be Charlie Brown, just like that. And then let's save. So new user.save, and then we'll add in our callback with the error, and then the data coming back, which is hopefully our user. And then we'll just do if error console.log error, else we're going to console.log user. So far, no associations. I'm just testing to see if our user model works. So let's run this. Node embed.js, and we get our user back with the ID that was automatically generated, name, and email. Great, let's try the same thing with post. So I'll comment that out so we don't get another user. And we're going to do var new post equals new post, and a post has a title. And the title of the post will be reflections on apples. And the text of that post, or the content, I think we called it, yes, content, will be they are delicious. All right, great blog post there. We'll save, make sure everything's good, and then we're going to actually do new post.save, pass in the callback again. By now, hopefully you're getting comfortable with this pattern because you're seeing it nonstop, where we're passing in this callback to Mongoose every time we do anything with Mongoose, finding, creating, saving, updating eventually, removing eventually. We need to pass in a callback with the error as the first parameter and then the data as the second one. All right, so if error console.log error, otherwise console.log post. Make sure these both work. Let's try it. And we run into a small issue. It's telling us that post is not defined when we're trying to make a new post. And the most logical reason for that to happen would be if we named our model something other than post. And what do you know? We named it post model. And by we, I mean that I named it incorrectly. So let's go with post. We could have kept it as post model and then changed it here, but it's definitely conventional to have it just be the name of what you're making. You don't need to have model in there. You don't need any extra characters, just the name of the model itself or of the entity, post, with a capital P. All right, so that matches now, right? We have post and post here. Let's try this again. And this time it adds a new post, content, they are delicious, title, reflections on apples. Okay, now that we've made sure that our two models are working correctly, we can make a post and we can make a user, but currently they have nothing to do with one another, and we want them to have a relationship. Remember that we want a user to have or to own many posts, and a post will belong to one user. So that's a one-to-many relationship. And the way that I'm going to show you to accomplish that is by embedding data inside of the user schema. So it's going to look like this, and then I'll explain it in just a moment. Where we're going to have a posts attribute inside the user. And inside the posts attribute, we're going to have a bunch of posts. And to make that work, we need to add the post schema inside of an array. So rather than making posts a string or a number or a Boolean, we're telling Mongoose we want it to be a list, an array of posts. And we have to write post schema, which is a little bit confusing, honestly. I wish that it was just post, the name of the model, but it's just the way that it is. It needs to be the name of the schema. And we have one other issue, which is that if we run this right now, it's not going to know what post schema is. And that's because we're defining it second. So if we're embedding the data, we need to define it first. So we define the post schema and the post model, and then we define the user schema, and inside the user schema, we're adding an attribute called posts, which is an array of posts. So if we do that, our data will look something like this, where we'll have a name for a user. Let's do email, and I'll just do gibberish, a name, and then we'll also have posts, and posts is an array, and inside that array, we have multiple posts. So each post has a title and content, and a user can have many posts, just like that. And so for every post that we get, it will be a new post inside of the posts attribute on a particular user. So let's get that going. Let's create a user, and then I'll show you how we can add a post to that user. So we can just use our Charlie Brown here. New user equals Charlie Brown, although I'll change some of the emails and names because we already have Charlie Brown in the database. Let's go with Hermione at Hogwarts.edu, and then we'll change this to be Hermione Granger. All right, so we have a new user, and then to add a post to that user, all I have to do is write new user dot posts dot push, because it's an array, and I push in a new post, and a post has a title. And the title of Hermione's post will be how to brew polyjuice potion. And then the content will be, just kidding, go to potions class to learn it. All right, whatever, it doesn't really matter. So we have a title and some content, and then we're going to push this post into new user, which we defined up here. And the last thing we need to do is save new user. So new user dot save, like that. And we actually already have this written, so I'll just reuse that and uncomment that. And this will try and save it. If there's an error, it will let us know. Otherwise, it will show us the user. And then let's comment out all the stuff down here about posts and just save that. And let's see what happens. So we have our post schema, which we defined. Then we have the user schema, and the new part is right here, where we have an array of posts inside of the user, and then we're creating a new user and pushing into that post array. Let's give it a shot. Okay, and we get back this user that we're printing here. Email is Hermione at Hogwarts, name is Hermione Granger, and then inside of posts, we have a new post. So that's working just fine. Now let's try something else where I'm going to comment all of this out, and rather than creating a new user, let's retrieve the existing user. So I'm going to retrieve Hermione. So I'll do that with user.find, and I'm going to use .find1. Otherwise, find will give me an array, and I just want one thing back. So we're going to do user.find1. We'll find where name is Hermione Granger, and then we'll do our standard callback, error, and we'll just call this user. Hopefully you're getting comfortable with that by now. This right here, the callback that we write pretty much every time we do anything with Mongoose. And then we'll just do an if error, console.log, error, and then otherwise, we'll console.log user. And I have an extra bracket I need to get rid of. There we go. So this is just to find Hermione back. Nothing new. We're just finding a user. And it works. We get the user coming back, where name is Hermione, email is Hermione at Hogwarts. Okay. Now let's suppose I want to add another post, because this is supposed to be a one-to-many. So one user can have multiple posts. Let's do that now. So inside of the else, once we find the user, we're going to run some code to add in a new post. And that looks like this. User.posts.push, just like before. And this time we'll push in another post. So we'll push in title. And the title is 3 Things I Really Hate. And the content will be Voldemort, Voldemort, and Voldemort. All right, very creative post there, Hermione. And we'll go ahead and save this. So we still need to do a user.save. And then we'll add in our callback afterwards. Another one of these, error, and we'll just call this user again. And inside of here, we'll do if error, console.log, error. Otherwise, console.log user. All right, so this is what some people would call callback hell. We have a lot of callbacks here. We have this first one, which is finding Hermione, finding that user that we're getting. And then we're pushing in a new post, but that doesn't actually add it to the database. We then have to save it. And so we do user.save. And this user right here, these two, are referring to the user that comes back when we find Hermione the first time. And then we're saving. And then this user is referring to what comes back from the save. So this user here now has the new post added to it and saved to the database. It's the data that is coming back to us from Mongo. And then we're printing it out. Let's try it now. So let me get rid of this first console.log. Just leave it like that. Let's clear. Make sure we don't have any other code running that's going to interfere with our console.logs. Let's run it. All right. So what we see is that we're now printing out a single user, Hermione, that has 2 posts. This first one and this second one. And they're both stored inside of the posts attribute on the single user. So it's one-to-many. Okay, so that's all I want to show. Let's just reflect on this briefly. So we started by setting up Mongoose. Then we have 2 models, and they were independent to start. And then we associated them by adding this post schema array to the user schema. So now a user has an array of posts, and it starts empty, but then we added to it by pushing in post.push, and then we saved. In the next video, I'm going to show you another way of associating data using what are called object references.